Hello, everyone. Welcome back to yours truly, The Plot of Confusion. Topic today, let's talk about the Mountain Dew conspiracy. Now, there's been a lot of different talk, different ideas, and I'm not saying that Mountain Dew itself is behind these events that we're going to look at, but I am going to say some things are just really interesting and kind of sparks this notion that there a theory that maybe we're having a predictive programming by products that come out by companies. Now, in a time in which everyone is questioning the narrative, and with AI moving as fast as it is, sometimes it's even hard to believe the videos you see on the internet. One second, we're told that the prime minister of Israel was in his bunker and he has perished. And the next, we're seeing him getting coffee at a coffee shop in another part of Israel. Some say you can see that he has six fingers on one hand. Some people look at even the minute detail of his sleeve, all of a sudden morphing into a white shirt up underneath. But yet, they put it into the generator and they say, look, this percentage here proves that this is AI generated. So, in a world of confusion and constant questioning the narrative, I kind of had this all hit me at once when my wife came to me early this morning and said, oh, by the way, I was watching some YouTube videos and I saw that Mountain Dew's coming out with a brand new drink. And I was like, really? Well, what is it? She's like, I don't know what the name of it is, but I know it's going to be made with like cream soda and Mountain Dew and has something to do with the fact that a lot of times the younger kids are mixing their drinks and different thing. And I was like, well, Mountain Dew has always come out with some new summer drink. And as we were talking about it, and where I do all my great thinking, I went to the bathroom and was sitting there, and it took me back to the time of my old YouTube channel I had that was known as Glop, which meant God loves our passion, Glop of truth. And with that, I started thinking back to the events of 9/11 and the conspiracy that had come out that predictive programming was 3 months before the horrific attacks on 9/11 that Mountain Dew came out with a brand new Mountain Dew drink, which was known as Code Red. Now, a lot of conspiracy theories got into it that it was a warning to the people that America was now going to be in Code Red and we would never be the same nation ever again. When I started thinking about that, I started going, a lot of that became true. You had the Homeland Security Act, and you had all this stuff. And then we went to war in Afghanistan, and then we invaded Iraq. And I started looking and saying, you're right. America before 9/11 was a very, very different America compared to America after 9/11. And that could it be that predictive programming was being used for coming out with a drink called Code Red? I wouldn't have thought anything else about it, but the more you kind of go down the rabbit hole of conspiracy theories, you start to realize that The Simpsons, for one, again, seems to either they are able to see the future or again it's predictive programming because a lot of things with The Simpsons predictions have and do come true. So the more I started looking into this today and then finding out the name of the drink called Dirty Mountain Dew, immediately my mind went to a dirty bomb. radioactive material, a city having a dirty bomb set off in it. All of a sudden, all this started flooding into my mind and my imagination. So then I was like, okay, conspiracy theories have sat there and said that Mountain Dew had the ties to 9/11. Were there any other conspiracies that could go along with this if there was any type of chance of there being a predictive programming happening with a with Mountain Dew? Well, all of a sudden things started coming down. Not to say that I'm saying Mountain Dew has anything to do with these conspiracies, but the fact that you have again another flavor that came out with, which was known as the Maha Blast flavor, was released in 2019. That same year, devastation fire swept through uh, Maui, and you had a lot of land being burnt and taken away, and a lot of displacement during that time. Another thing that people go with a theory with the uh, Maha Maha blast is particularly the tradition that the DEW is a acronym that conspiracy theorists use to describe direct energy weapon. Now, one thing that kind of stood out with me is something that I started looking and seeing is that you had President Biden saying, yeah, we got to do something about those blue just not working like it's supposed to with the color blue. And then you find out that everything in that area that didn't burn by these horrific fires was blue. You had houses and other vehicles, but there was a blue car sitting right there, and it was as if it hadn't even been touched. You would have blue roofs, and nothing had happened to the house. You had blue plastic trash cans, completely not affected. And I started scratching my head going, is there an energy weapon? Was there one? Now, for me, I will tell you, I do believe that we do live in a world of confusion, and I believe that the orchestrator of this confusion is the God of this world, which is Satan. I believe that he is behind a lot of stuff, and the fallen angels that are in cahoots with him do and have been manipulating our world for years. The other thing that got me is as I started to think about this and look a little bit more into it was the fact that there is things that are patents and stuff that deals with the United States trying to create energy weapons. And what makes me say this or look at this is that you have today, President Trump came out and said, you will see new weapons that has never been seen before be used. And all of a sudden, in certain parts of um, Iran, the sky at night lit up blue like a blue laser was coming from the heavens and hitting certain places in Iran and catching it on fire. The more I started to look into this and the more I started to think about this, the more I was like, wait a second. If this is the case, is there any other things that could stand out? Well, you had another drink that came out in 2024, which was known as the Star Spangled Splash. And it is believed that the Francis Scott Key Bridge in Baltimore that collapsed in 2024, again, Mountain Dew had just came out with a new drink just months before this happened. Another thing that stood out is you had the Baja Midnight. which, as again, some predict that the name implies directly to the witching hour and a time of night, like a thing dealing with a doomsday clock, if you wish, or the a risk of a global nuclear war. Not only did you have that, but you had the clock whenever this one came out, the midnight. You had 89 seconds to midnight, closer to midnight of a nuclear disaster that has ever been put on the clock. The more I started looking into this, you had something that was called the Midnight Hammer, U.S. Defense Department, where they were going to come and implement new rules and regulations. I gotta tell you, the more I started to look into this, the more it was like really making me scratch my head. You had a flavor, they revealed a flavor called the impeachment tea. Some people even had that connected to them trying to impeach Donald Trump for the third time. Again, dealing with predictive programming. Then, on top of that, you had um, several floodings, several things connected to those different drinks from Mountain Dew and other foods. It made me start wondering that if there is a entity that is behind everything and there is a spiritual nature, could there be a reason why we would have people connecting these dots where other people would look at it and say, hey, there's not really a dot, you're stretching, you're reaching. But the more you start to look at it, the more you start to go, wait a second, there's some things that are not adding up. Prime example, Hollywood is not what we've been told. We have the Epstein files, and we have everything that shows us that the world that we live in is not this wholesome, clean, family friendly world. Everything is turning us upside down, shaking our foundation, and that anyone that has put hope in this world is losing it rapidly. So the more I looked at this, I was like, could there be some connection to having this new drink being called Dirty Mountain Dew? Because the 9/11 was called Code Red. You had you got what's known as the Voodoo Mystery Flavors, which is an annual thing in Halloween, where if you go with sorcery, you know that they always have to let you know what they're doing before they do it. In 2024, you have the pitch black, and we had some of the biggest IT blackouts ever in history. You have the tropical swirl that happened in 2024 again. And you had the hurricane season being some of the worst in the southeastern states. Still are trying to recover today from the Maha burst, which was the Maha fires, to 9/11, the Star Spangled Banner, to the bridge, made me go, what could be a scenario that would unfold with a dirty Mountain Dew? It made me think immediately to a dirty bomb. To We already saw in Texas over the weekend, we had a oil refinery just for some reason explode to the point they were telling residents to know where their evacuation, to make sure they knew where they would be safe for them to evacuate. We see the war in Iran increasing exponentially. We see that the world today is not what it used to be. And I kept sitting here thinking, as I was also doing my morning Bible study, I came to some scriptures that really just stood out to me that I want to share with you. Which, you know anything about my channel, you know that we look at the Bible and it is our foundation that we live our day and day life. Zechariah chapter 5, 1 through 4 tells us, Then I lifted up my eyes and again looked, and behold, there was a flying scroll. He said to me, What do you see? And I answered, I see a flying scroll. Its length is 12 cubits, and its width is 10 cubits. Then he said to me, This is the curse that is going forth over the face of the whole land. Surely everyone who steals will be purged away according to the right on one side, and everyone who swears will be purged away according to the right on the other side. I will make it go forth, declares the Lord Yahweh of hosts, and it will enter the house of the thief, and the house of who swears falsely by my name, and it will spend the night within the house and consume it with its timber and stones. Now you might think, well, what's that mean? It means that the world will become into a type of judgment and that this curse will consume. Well, do we have a description of what the curse could be? In the same book of Isaiah, you go to chapter 14 and you look at verse 12, and it says, Now this will be the plague, that which the Lord Yahweh will strike on the people who have gone to war against Jerusalem. Their flesh will rot while they stand on their feet. Their eyes will rot in their sockets, and their tongue will rot in their mouth. It will come about in that day that a great panic from the Lord Yahweh will fall on them, and they will seize one another's hands, and the hand of one will be lifted against the hand of another. Judea will also fight at Jerusalem, and the wealth of the soaring nations will gather gold, silver, and garments in great abundance. So also, like this plague, will be a plague on the horses, the mules, the camels, the donkeys, and all cattle that will be in those camps. When it comes about that any who are left of all nations and went against Jerusalem will go up year by year to worship the King of the Lord Yahuwah and host and celebrate the Feast of Booths. So you have a plague that consumes. The more you start to look into dirty bombs and look into dirty and nuclear, this is exactly how it is described that it does to humans' flesh. Well, do we have any ties to it anymore? Yeah, if you go to Second Peter, when I was doing my looking into this, because I look at the Bible as my foundation. And I look at the Bible to see if there's things in the scriptures that um, we as Christians should be um, like watchmen on the wall, so it says. And in Second Peter, it tells us in verse 10, it says, For the day of the Lord will come like a thief, in which the heavens will pass away with a roar, and the elements will be destroyed with intense heat, and the earth and its works will be burned up. Since all these things are to be destroyed in this way, what sort of people ought you to be a holy conduct and godliness? Look for and hastening coming of the day of God, because of which the heavens will be destroyed by burning, and the elements will melt with intense heat. Again, will let you see what a type of dirty bomb would do. So if there is, which I believe there is the enemy, which is Satan, he also knows the Bible and knows his time is short. So if the scriptures is showing you things in it that could very easily be a dirty bomb, a nuclear warhead going off, you have to understand that this is talked about in the book of Revelation. in the sixth chapter, verses 13 and 14, it says, and the stars of the sky fell to the earth, as fig trees cast its unripe figs when shaken by a great wind. The sky was split apart like a scroll when it was rolled up, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the commanders, and the rich, and the strong, and every slave and free man hid themselves in the caves and among the rocks of the mountains. And they said to the mountains and to the rocks, fall on us, hide us from the presence of him who sits on the throne, and from the wrath of the Lamb. The great day of their wrath has come, and who is able to stand? When you start to realize that the Bible really starts to show that there's a thing that could be very much interpreted as a nuclear blast. And then you see the war that's happening in the Middle East. And one thing that's happening now that's talked about more than I've ever heard before is not if it will happen, but when it happens, a dirty bomb being set off or a nuclear blast happening somewhere in the world. So if there is any links to this conspiracy of Mountain Dew, and if there is this conspiracy about Mountain Dew, and that it has any truth to it, could they be telling us to our faces that a dirty bomb, the dirty and the mountains and the commotion and destruction will be upon us soon? Or it could be nothing. It could just be my imagination. It could be me and my imagination just running wild. But if not, and there is such thing as predictive programming, could this be telling us a future event that the next plan they have is underway? Until next time, God bless, take care, and remember, we're all a part of this plot of confusion.